All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming, Giant Cat and all. Today we're going to be having a chat with Tom Ens, who runs FanStory. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
We're going to talk about all things FanStory, writing competitions, writing communities, and all that kind of stuff. If you guys have got any questions, just pop them in the chat and we can ask them as we go along. So to start with, Tom, can I ask you to talk about your background as a writer and writing competition judge and kind of how you first got started in the writing world?
Well, I've always been a writer. As from a kid, I always enjoyed the written word. Um, when I went to school, I had two loves. It was programming and writing. I went with the writing aspect because it was easier, quite frankly, to get a degree with my writing skills. I did do journalism. I was worked for a local newspaper, which I enjoyed greatly. I do enjoy writing, but in the end, programming went out, and basically, I became a consultant in New York City. The very early stages of the internet, and at that point, we were really mainly focused on intranet, which is internal internet for the corporation. So I was doing a lot of that at the time when I started FanStory.
Okay,
So
cool.
I would say my background is more programming than writing. I do write, but not like the people on my site who, I think are a little more passionate about it than I am.
So is that kind of what inspired you to build a website and start a writing platform?
No, what I started FanStory basically because believe it or not, I was playing a video game, a game basically where you go into this world and you be a character. We took it real serious. I had some friends I met online who did this with me. We took it very seriously. We role played our what we were doing, and I started writing about it. So I started writing stories about what we did the night before, and they really wanted to read it. If you're a writer and you want someone to read your book, put them in it. That works quite
Yeah.
well. So I was writing these stories, but I had nowhere to put it. This was back in 2000. So to give you perspective, the internet back then, there was no Facebook. That didn't exist yet. There was no Twitter. That didn't exist yet. Really didn't have a lot of options when you wanted to share something. So being a programmer, I started FanStory only because fanfiction.com wasn't available, because basically what I was writing was fan fiction. And I started sharing my work there, and people started to join, mainly from the gaming world, to share their online stories. And that's really where FanStory got its start. It was a need that I had to fill.
Right. So was it any of it D&D based then? Because a lot of people that play those kind of role-playing games go on
It
to
was very
write
much
on
like that.
them.
It was called Asheron's Cult, which I don't think exists anymore, but it was a D&D type world. So there's a lot of fantasy elements, which is great for writing. So it really fit right into that. And fortunately, the people I were playing with were very much into their characters. We only spoke to each other in character for the most part, which the other people thought we were nuts. The other people playing the games didn't understand us because they weren't doing any of that. I went into this game thing, it's a fantasy game. No, they were just being regular people. And that actually drew a lot of attention to what I was writing because we were so unique in that aspect, you know. But initially, fan story was only stories, no poetry, and really only fan fiction. I think when I started, I actually asked people what game they were playing. That's how specific it was at the time.
Right. Okay, so it was very niche. So how did you move from running that into competitions?
Competitions came later. What actually came next was everybody's writing stories, and one of the people who was writing these stories was very good. He asked me if he could write poetry. I was like, poetry? That's not what we do, but okay. I mean, one of the benefits I have is being everything's custom written. I can, customize it. And over the 25 years, that's been a huge benefit, so I could change things as we saw fit. So I added the poetry element, and then the floodgates opened. Then people found fan story because there's much more interest I find in people writing poetry and sharing their poetry, and there is in prose. I'm not saying prose isn't big, it is, but poetry is probably 60-70% of what's posted. Um,
Oh.
so that opened the floodgates, and then we started seeing a lot of people, me and me, I'm getting the habit of doing that. So a lot of people coming to the site, sharing different forms of writing, and that's when we started expanding it and, into added contests and that sort of thing. But contest wasn't really the draw, and maybe it still isn't. It's more about the feedback you get. The contests are sort of a plus.
Okay, so it started off as a kind of community platform. Was it
Right.
was it free?
It was free at first, and I remember the day I said, this is expensive to run. Is it okay if I start charging you guys? And that was one of the big surprises of my life. They're like, absolutely, absolutely. Charge us. We want to support the site. And so maybe a couple of years in is when I actually started. And it was, a minimal fee at the time, but it did help, run the site and, the servers and all that. There's a lot that goes into it,
Yeah, yeah. So
especially
it
back then.
started off community-wise, and it was a place where people could share their work and get feedback from other users.
Right. The feedback was immediate because I wanted people to tell what they thought of my stories. So that was and still is the biggest part of the site. But things change over the years as well. I mean, one example is, I wanted the world to read my writing. A few years in, I realized not everybody wants that. If you're going to want to get published, you don't want the world to read your writing. So one of the features that was introduced pretty early on was the ability to say, I just want other members to read my writing. We don't show your work on Google. We don't show your work on anywhere else. If somebody goes to your site, they're going to get a page not found, basically. So that's one of the features we offer, which I think is very popular. And as time has gone on, more and more people take advantage of that. I'd say most people actually keep their portfolio private. Doesn't mean other authors can't see it, but nobody else can.
Yeah. So in essence, it's not published, and therefore they can submit it
Exactly.
places. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
But they can still
Exactly.
gain feedback.
They can still get feedback. It's not published. It's only seen by handful of people, and a publisher does a Google search, they're not going to find your work. So that was an early feature that we added as well.
So are you one of the first people to start offering that kind of platform? Because obviously there's some big ones now like Wattpad and all sorts of different ones, aren't there, that do offer a similar service, I suppose. But were you one of the first ones?
I'm guessing we were, being that it was 2000. I'm
Hmm.
not that familiar with those sites. I think where our sites, FanStory is different, is the community aspect. I mean, that's a big, big part of the site, is the feedback. We do have requirements when you write feedback, length requirements, for example. I know a lot of other sites don't offer that. You get, one line, comments or thumbs up, that kind of stuff. I think we do draw a more professional oriented group. We've had a lot of writers go on to be published, and they're serious about it. So, I found that, I'm not sure exactly why, but it's a good community, and I think part of it is when you post something, it's much different than say Facebook or Twitter. When you post something, you're sharing your heart a lot of times. I read poems and, they're touching. People who lost kids, lost loved ones, had problems when they were a child. And you read something like that, and then you write a review, you get an attachment with that person, and what do you write in that review? Well, it's going to be, I'm sorry for what you went through, and this is what I've gone through. And I've seen a lot of friendships develop from that. I think that's really the reason we've had people on the site for 18 years, not just 18 years, like come back every once in a while, 18 years solid, and it's not community. And it's you're not going to get that on Twitter or Facebook or anything else where you have that type of one-on-one, heart to heart type feedback. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, I can see why people value it. I mean, if it's got that kind of close community feel to it, it must add a lot of value to the members.
I think it does, and honestly, it was never my intention. I just wanted people to read my silly game stories. I never expected the community to grow in the way it has, which is probably one of the most rewarding parts of FanStory to me, is that it's happened. I mean, I know people have gotten married from FanStory. I know people have checked on each other. One elderly person was sick, and that one of the members checked on him and got him what he needed. The medical attention that he needed. I never thought that would happen from this, and it's great to see.
Wow. So, well, I was going to talk to you about competitions first, but let's talk about that side of it. Um, what do you offer members beyond what we've already talked about? Are there any other features to the platform?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the obvious. You get the feedback. You guarantee you just post something, you're going to get 2 reviews. If you promote it, you can get, 30, 40 reviews. There's the contests, which I guess we'll go into later. We have clubs, which is interesting. These are run by site members. If you're into, say, writing haikus, then there's a club for that. If you want to write nonfiction, there's a club for that. These are run by site members, and they give you challenges, like write a poem about, I don't know, trees. Something to get you going, get you interested in that type of poetry. We have some members that actually teach, who are former professors who actually teach members, about writing. So that's a big part of it. And then, I think that's pretty much the main things. I mean, there's probably more there that I'm not thinking of right now, but those are the main features I think that stand out. I mean, it's mainly feedback and writing contests more than anything. And then the community aspect, like the forums and that kind of thing.
So how do you go about kind of managing the community aspect of it? Do you have to police it at all, or are generally people quite respectful of each other? And how does that side of it?
Generally, yes. And every once in a while you have a problem, but it's rare. I think that you are attracting more serious writers. They're not really big problems. One of the features I added early on was a mute button. So there's a conflict, my first thing is mute them. And that way they can't see you, you can't see them. And, it's kind of like the teacher in the room putting one person on the side of the room and the other kid on the other side of the room. That helps, but don't have a lot of issues. I mean, I could probably count on one hand, any time of issues that I've had over the years. I mean, I do once in a while I have to get involved, but it's not a normal thing.
Okay, so it's usually just self-policing.
It's usually self-policing. I think the mute button, but like I said, people generally it's not really an issue, fortunately, because when it is an issue, it's never fun.
No. And do you run workshops and stuff around it, like with these groups, or is that just kind of something people do themselves?
But there is a feature to like post a work to just certain individuals, and that is a feature of FanStory. But that's as far as it goes when it comes to workshops. We don't generally do things like that.
Right, okay. So let's move into the kind of competition side of it. That came
Right.
later. How did that start and how has it evolved over time?
I don't remember exactly how it evolved. I remember early on we had, the story of the month, and probably shortly after that, poem of the month. We still have that. So we basically select, 10 to 12 posts of each category and give the authors the ability to vote on which ones they like the best. I remember story of the month because I was entering my own work and I never I never won, but that stopped pretty quickly as I got more writers. So we have poem of the month, story of the month, and we also have you can post poems, you can post stories, you can post scripts, and you could post what else? Oh, books. That's a big part. You can post books a chapter at a time. So we have contests for them. The contests that we have now is probably much different than we had back then because we just have more. And we have over 90 contests with cash prizes open right now that you can enter. And we try and, what we're trying to do now is really make them, I guess the word, we have a tendency to run the same contest over and over again. I mean, in some cases it's haiku. You're always going to want to enter that type of contest. But we're trying to challenge the writers more with different type of contests. And, for the older members, I think they appreciate that most.
How do you go about managing that volume of competition?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, the first thing I did early on, I never ever judged the contest personally. I've never done it. I realized that really wasn't my place. I'm a programmer. I write a little bit. So I very early on, I started committees. We have a committee for contests. We have a committee for recognizing a writer each month. We have a committee for reviewing entries for member-created contests, which I can go into a little bit more. Member-created contests are basically contests that site members create. They don't have a cash prize, but you can still, there's still a competition. I don't want to forget anyone. We have a committee where basically if you write a book and you finish on the site, you can get comment on you get feedback on your book as a whole. And they're basically authors who are looking to see if your work is publishable. And if not, why not? So they'll give you a very detailed feedback about your book. When you write it on FanStory, you're getting feedback on chapters. They'll give you a feedback on the entire book. So we have committees that really do all the nitty gritty. They determine the contests, who wins. They really run the site basically. I'm here for administration. I'm here to create, new features. They're there to support the community, and they do an incredible job at doing that. And I'm very fortunate that I went that direction, because you don't want me judging the contest.
No, and the amount of time it would take.
That's a good point too.
The committees, are they made up of members, or have you got a kind of team that run it?
They are made up of members. They're basically members that stood out for what they did. Writing reviews. They're the ones that write the really detailed reviews. They're the ones who, when they write really well. They're the ones who've been published. So they're really the standout writers, and they're obviously very good at what they do. So to become a member is not easy. The committee has to basically determine as a group that they want to bring you in, and if they do bring you in, then you're basically a member as long as you want to be.
That's a really good way of setting it up.
Thank you.
Because it's the polar opposite I do mine myself, and I do all the reading, and it must be really nice to have like a team of people that do that kind of stuff.
I think it helps. Because you're going to have different opinions. You're going to, they have to read all the entries, which is very time consuming. Then they have to discuss it. But they do a good job. And I never had any complaints about the winners being chosen, which is really surprising. You'd expect to get a lot of messages saying, I should have won that contest. And I don't get a lot of that, which I'm still surprised about, And I guess I have to give them credit, And it was a good direction to go, because it freed me up to continue to improve the site and work on other things.
Yeah. So obviously you've been freed up to do that. What I saw on I think it was your advertising page, wasn't it, where you get like a lot of views every month. What kind of marketing do you do to generate that much interest in the site and get that many people visiting it?
Well, obviously, I think like most companies, they do SEO work. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically, promoting your work outside on other sites, like your site. I'm on your site, and thank you. But I think most of it actually comes naturally. Over the years, we've always had a lot of work posted, and a lot of members do want their work public, and they want the world to see it. So in that case, if you do a search on Google for pretty much any topic, you're going to find something written on FanStory over the past 25 years that matches that topic. So a lot of it just comes from that. You can do a search, you see FanStory, you go to FanStory, and, you start clicking around. The other part of it is that we have a lot of people on the site writing reviews. So, some people could be on the site for hours writing reviews. That's going to generate a lot of traffic. So I think it's those two things. It's not so much what I do, really. It's just more natural from other factors.
Word of mouth.
Yes, and Google.
Yeah. That's the best kind of traffic you can have.
Yeah, absolutely.
When people are finding you for useful content. So have you got a lot of advice pieces on the site as well that people can find and read?
There are a lot of posts about writing. Got a couple really good authors that do that. I don't know about advice necessarily, but more so, this is what I did in my life, and versus, and that could bring a lot of key traffic from Google. It'll just match in that regard.
What kind of success stories have you had? Have you got any that stand out in your mind, both from writers that use the site and what you regard as a success for FanStory as well?
It's interesting. This is our 25th anniversary. So I actually reached out to my older members, not older in that regard, who've been around the site for a long time. And I asked them, what is your experience? And I have a page, maybe we could share it. I'm not sure if that's an option, where they write about their experience on FanStory, 15, 16, 17, 18 years. And there obviously there's been some that have been published, which is huge. But for me, that's not necessarily a success. I think more is what FanStory did for them. I mean, one interesting testimonial was a woman who, when she started, she had a baby, and her child's going up to college now, and all that time she's been with FanStory. And I think it's more what FanStory has done in people's lives. Back to the community aspect. But absolutely, there's been some success stories. I want to single anyone out. Some of those are on our testimonial page where you can read it. And some have actually started careers like editing from this because they're such good reviewers. You get good at that. And one actually, speaking of review, and we didn't talk about that much, but the reviews that you receive, I've noticed, I think one of the testimonials mentioned, by writing reviews, I'm becoming a better writer. Because you learn to read critically when you find flaws in your own writing. And then by writing those reviews, you're actually writing, you become a better writer. And I thought it was an interesting way of looking at it because, writing reviews isn't easy. You have to read something, you got to think about it, you got to put them down in words. But she said it's made me a better writer, and that's part of the reason I write reviews, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah.
I've always done like critique swaps where you learn as much from critiquing someone else's work as you do from receiving a critique of your own work. But I
There
suppose
you go.
reviews are the same kind of thing, aren't they?
Like, sounds very similar, yes.
Yeah. Um, so you said you're coming up for your, or have you had your 25th year anniversary
This
already?
is this is it.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is
It
it.
started in 2000, yeah.
And how have you seen the kind of writing landscape change? Obviously, the internet's changed massively during that time, but what kind of changes have you noticed in, I don't know, short stories and poetry writing? Has the popularity swung at all? Have some of the trends
Well,
that
yeah.
write about changed? Do you have any final pearls of wisdom for writers, especially those submitting to writing competitions for the first time, or thinking about joining a community like yours?
Yes. Let me get my notes out again. There's like more community questions. Um, my thoughts would be, don't be discouraged if you don't win a contest. I mean, the process of entering a contest, writing for a topic that you may not be comfortable with, maybe writing for a poetry type you're not comfortable with, should be rewarding. And you're going to get feedback as well on FanStory. So don't be discouraged if you don't win. It's the process of trying to win that I think helps you as a writer. But my committee, let's see what they said. It may be a little repetitive here, but they said they look for a line that's relatable. The first line is critical. They want to be hooked very early on. They said read the rules carefully. In the average site contest, around 10% of entries disqualify themselves before they even start. Wrong word count, poetry instead of prose, fiction instead of nonfiction. So make sure you read the rules. Avoid wordiness. If the same thing can be said in few words, do it. Don't use two words either if you run the risk of being unclear, but try to put yourself in the reader's mind to see how they might interpret what you're saying. Read the dialogue over and over, even out loud, to check for realism. Think to yourself, would a real person say it that way? Avoid repetition in your writing, even in dialogue. In real speech, people often repeat the same word and phrases. Fictional dialogue is different. It should be genuine, not so genuine that it perfectly mimics real speech, because that is boring and full of repetitiveness. And finally, they said, don't be afraid to strip out whole sections if they don't advance the plot or develop the characters. You'll leave the readers wondering, what was the purpose of that? So a lot of these guys have been doing it for 20 years, these contests. So, maybe not 20 years, 15 is probably more thing. So they have a lot of experience reading. So that's what they came up with I think, which answers that question.
It sounds like a lot of the stuff that Linda puts in the critiques that she does.
Okay, that's a good sign.
So
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
I was thinking that creative writing apparently doesn't have any rules, but I think that it does in a way.
Yeah,
They're
There are
all using the same
guidelines.
ones. Guidelines,
Guidelines.
yeah. Yeah.
Linda said, what does FanStory membership cost for an individual?
Well, you can get started for $1.99 for the first month. And after that, it's $12.95 a month. Or if you wanted to pay for the full year in advance, we'll give you a 50% discount, which puts it around $75, $76 for a full year. And with that, you don't have to pay for the contest. You can just enter contests with cash prizes. You'll get feedback for everything you write, at least 2 reviews. And if you write reviews, there's a give and take system. The more reviews you write, the more you'll earn what we call member dollars. And you can use those member dollars to promote your work for more reviews. And, some posts get 30, 40 reviews. And so I think that covers it. And of course, into the clubs and everything else. So you can get started for $1.99. If you don't like it, you can cancel. If you don't like it within a 10-day period or a 7-day period, we'll give you a full refund. And that goes with the 1-year membership as well. You can purchase that. And if you're not happy, we'll give you'll write to me and I'll give you a refund right away.
That's really good value for what you're offering.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Alrighty. I was going to ask you one more question that sprung into my mind while you were reading all the feedback from your guys.
Sure.
Are they all based in America or are they based across the world, the committee?
Oh no, they're across the world. We have people just as you'd expect. We have members from every English-speaking country, U.S. of course, and Australia. And the committee members are made from all. And we do that on purpose, because one thing I noticed, like if you're writing in the UK, you may use words differently than in the US. And we may say, what the heck is that word mean? Or well, that's bad context, but it isn't if you're writing for your country. So we try to have expertise in every committee. And again, we have many different committees, but especially with the contest, we try to have an expertise in poetry and prose. And we try to, include people from various countries as well.
So they can pick up on the weird spellings and the differences because there's quite a lot.
Yes, it is. And I actually noticed some people put notes in their writing saying, this is UK English,
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you, Tom, so much for your time. That was really interesting to find out a bit more about how it all works.
I really enjoyed it. It was nice meeting everybody. And I really, appreciate the opportunity. It's nice to talk about the site with other writers. So thank you for this opportunity.
I'm going to come on over and have a look, Tom, because it sounds like you've got a lot going on there, a lot of interesting stuff.
That's nice to hear. Thank you, Linda. I'll look forward to seeing you there.
And thank you for your questions, Linda and Kelly, and everyone else who submitted before. I will stop recording now and then we can say goodbye. But for everyone watching, bye-bye.